Okay, let's see if anybody joins in.
How can you see?
Well, some people will log in over here on the chat if they're there.
I'll say that this person joined. I'm saying it's gonna start going live.
Yeah. Because I didn't announce this in advance, so I don't know whether anybody is going to be watching or not. So we'll see. Give people a chance to join in. And I didn't schedule this until 3 anyway. So we'll just hang loose. See if anybody joins in. Could be what? Anyway. Oh no, that's not it.
What does that mean? Like they looked at it?
No, it just means how good is the strength.
The P current?
Yeah, because the stream is feeding live. It's feeding live to YouTube, so it's just a matter of how good it is. Let's just keep watching. If you're watching out there, go ahead and log in on the chat and let me know you're there, because this is so impromptu and to such a limited audience. Hey, there's somebody. Hey, Gabor, I don't know how to say your name. That way I'll know if you're there. Totally unplanned. Now let's see, it says 3 watching now. I had actually scheduled this for 3 o'clock, so I'm giving people a chance to see. I only just published this, giving people a chance to see. I'll move this window over. Hello, J. Robert Darrell. Glad you could join me. I'm giving people a chance to join, so I'm just going to hang loose for a minute or two. Anybody that joins, I see 4 are watching now. Anybody who wants to join in the chat, please do. And let us know you're out there. Because this is just going to $10 plus patrons. So there won't be a lot of you. It'll be a very limited audience. And I'd love it if everyone who's watching would join in the chat. If you're watching over on Patreon, please go to the YouTube page. It's the only place that you can chat from. So how's the weather out in Austin, Texas, Mr. Darrell? There's a bit of a delay, so people won't get it right away. Yep, I'll be looking at that. 86 degrees, nice. We're about, I think, 58 today. Cloudy here in South Carolina. We'll give it a little more time, see if anybody else joins. Yeah, it's actually kind of a bummer to have too warm a weather this time of year. Not to mention it kind of drives the farmers a little nutty. We have a lot of peach farms around here, and if those peach trees start blooming early, it devastates the peach crop, because we'll get a frost definitely before April. Another one, frost and freeze. So, oh. While they're nice, I don't like to have too much warm weather. Let's see, I need to type something and then stop. I got my iPad out here, and it's a little hard to see. I'm really experimenting today with a new camera setup. You know, this photo here is hard to see. This is what I'm studying from. This is the program called Procreate on the iPad. I want to do a watercolor of this piece here. And I know, real hard to see, but iPads have the ability to bring in your photo, two programs at once, and see both, and so I can have both programs going. And I'm just looking at that, and this is a hemlock tree that gets some great afternoon sunlight. Weather's chilly in London. Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, good. Sun. Yeah. Gotta love the sun. So what I wanted to do today is try try this new camera setup, but I also wanted to be able to answer any questions that you might have, and I didn't announce this ahead of time because again, testing I think what might be a better camera setup. And I've also got my granddaughter with me, who is going to maybe help me read some of the questions. Hey everybody, just bring the inset in for a minute. Say hi.
Hi.
This is my granddaughter Zoey. So far just, there's 5 watching now. So if you've just joined, I hope you'll log into the chat. Let us know you're there. Down to 4. I do use Photoshop, Robert. I especially use it to edit photos that I'm going to paint pictures of, and we'll even do like preliminary sort of edits to them that how do I explain it? I may erase parts of the background. I can do some pre-simplification. I don't do this every time, but if I'm really having a hard time visualizing what I want to do in a painting, I may get in there with brushes and painting software. Well, actually Photoshop is the painting software, but with painting brushes, and I may kind of blur some details. I may move some things. I may combine parts of 2 photos. Only if that's going to help me visualize the finished process any better. So yeah, I'm actually doing a little bit of painting from scratch in Photoshop, but I haven't had time to do that much.
What's your favorite brush in Procreate? Mine is the chalk one. I could get used to the pencil brushes. Yeah,
the chalk one's pretty good. I'll show you. I actually have a favorites folder here that I've made, and I've altered most of these, but you can copy any brush into a new folder, and these are my favorite. This Nico Rule. It's kind of a chalk-like brush, I guess. Big chunky kind of. It's good for roughing in some stuff. I like that. Let's see, just for sketching I actually like this acrylic brush, and that's what I was going to start with here. So you know what, not too many other people have joined yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started drawing. And this, as I mentioned before, is going to be a pre-sketch study for a painting that I want to do. It's hard to see this photo, but there was really nice light. Just every afternoon, in the afternoon when I head down, check the mail, I see this. And I finally snapped a picture of it. I love the light, and I want to use that as kind of a starting point for a painting. And this is mostly just going to be in grays, a value study, so I'm not going to get much color involved yet. Let's see. You mentioned the pencil. I don't mind the pencil brushes. You can do some really realistic pencil shading with it. I don't mind them. When I'm drawing something though in Procreate from scratch, I usually use fairly broad brushes and grays that I can build up. So it's kind of like sculpting the subject. And right now I'm just going to block in the major forms. Right now I'm worried mostly about just placement, and I'll start fiddling with values later. What's going to make or break this piece will be values. If I can communicate this the way I want, and I'm using this. This is sort of a fat chalk brush. I don't know if it's actually in the chalk group, the charcoals group. Excuse me. But I like it. I like it for roughing in textury areas. And I'm probably gonna make more foliage here than is actually in the photo. Right now I'm just blocking in. There's a delay between what we're doing and what they see. small is it in there?
In there. Would you recommend the technique for sketching with watercolor?
Yeah, if you're comfortable with digital, you know, any kind of, and like I said, this is a study for me, and any kind of study for me is meant to answer questions. You know, like, how do I want the values to be established? That's kind of what I'm trying to answer for myself here. I really loved the lighting situation. I like digital in this case because I can experiment with values quickly, erase them if I don't like them, and come back and try different values. So yeah, I would recommend it if you know, digital is something you're comfortable with. I'm going to add an overall tone to the background because it's the only thing that's going to make these highlights pop out, and I haven't popped out any highlights yet. It's very rough, very preliminary right now. Trying to get stuff in there. Still kind of blocking in. I know a lot of this is not making a lot of sense yet. It will when I start getting the highlights in. That's the thing about digital, even over sketching on paper, is it's easy to experiment with highlights and values. Again, if you're comfortable, you know, if you're not comfortable with digital, I don't recommend getting into digital, because if you're not familiar with it, it's a whole new learning curve. It's a whole frustrating kind of learning curve.
How did you learn to use this tool?
This, hey Mary, glad to have you join. I just downloaded it and started going through some video tutorials and just started practicing with it. I was familiar with Photoshop. I've done a lot of painting over the years in Photoshop, digital painting. So, you know, it wasn't that difficult to pick this up. While it's different, some of the tools are definitely different. You know, you get used to kind of how things are done, and everything I'm doing here you can do on paper. And this is sort of a difficult, this particular photo is sort of a difficult lighting challenge to solve. Let me see if I can, this really doesn't show up well right here. Let me see if I can show you. The photo by itself. Well, come on. Okay, that's probably, you can see that a little better. This is the photo by itself. And I really am interested in getting this light. And the only way to get light to really pop and glow is everything around it has to be darker. So experimenting with those values, you can do it with pencil. But with digital, it just gives me a little bit quicker response time, I guess you might call it, to putting what I see or what I want to see down on the paper and then revising it if I want to revise it. And I'm working on the deepest values right now. As a matter of fact, let me go in and put in some light values just so I can see where I'm standing with those. There are tons of videos on YouTube about how to use Procreate. Or Photoshop for that matter. In some places, these branches are almost silhouettes. I like to get these situations here where you can get branch shadows falling across the tree. So they don't show up a lot in the photo, so I want to kind of accentuate those and add those myself in places. Just trying some different brushes here. I'm just scrub in some more of this foliage. Start deciding where I want to highlight that. And when I actually get to doing a finished painting this, a lot of these boughs and stuff up in here, probably going to let watercolor do a lot of that almost spontaneously. And just try to manage the contrast and values in the tree trunk area itself. Right now I'm still only adding the dark and midtones to the foliage. I'm adding a lot more foliage than is actually there. This is a hemlock tree. I don't know if I mentioned that. I think I might have at the beginning. As you can tell, I'm keeping this pretty rough. I'm trying to add a bit of a priority to the values that's not really there in the photo. In the photo, they're like all over the place. You see that neat glow on the tree trunk, tree branches, but everything's so chaotic it's so hard to tell what's going on with other various boughs and foliage and that sort of thing. So I want to define some of those, but at the same time, you know, I want everything to kind of just bring your center of interest back here. This is probably coming across to you guys a little bit on the dark side. It's videoing off of a computer screen is kind of difficult, and I'm not real experienced at that. Yeah, Mary, that's true. It might be. Or even over gray paper. It would certainly be a little easier with gouache. Because complex subjects like this with light, it's easier to go in and add the highlights later than it is to plan for it with watercolor. So I think maybe I would try it over toned gray paper. And while this, something like I'm doing here doesn't look like much, it is answering a lot of questions for me. I've gone to the smudge tool. I'm just smudging some of these values together. I'm going to add a bit of a sky hole, I think, up here and have some more branches. Poking through and showing through. Maybe some coming from above. So really I can see these values all kind of being loose and washy, wet in, wet out here, with some detail forming in here, and just a little bit of highlighting to make sure that your eye catches the fact that those are pine boughs or hemlock boughs. You know, really a lot of the darkness is down underneath these boughs, so you know it's kind of getting the light to kind of push to the outside, and then inside here where some shafts of sunlight have come. You know, I think this might be best done with gouache. How does the camera or the image look to you guys? I'm trying a new image capture system and I'm just not sure about it. Does it look on par with usual, better than what you remember, or really looking pretty bad, or what? It's one of the reasons for me doing this test stream today. Okay. Well, that's really got nothing to do with the camera setup, but yeah, I imagine it probably could be bigger. Actually, you know, I don't need that photo so much anymore, as I'm kind of working on my own rendition of it now. I think I've seen enough of the photo. Yeah. So maybe that helps you see it a little better. Appreciate you guys being my guinea pigs today. Yeah, Procreate is neat, Robert. It if you're patient and comfortable with digital tools, it's really worth learning. And really, the iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil are almost a must. Kind of sorry to say that. You're going to have to be in the Mac sort of ecosystem, because I don't think Procreate is available for Android systems. But you know, without the Apple Pencil, it really is nothing.
What does the little circle tool do?
This one? That's a color picker. So you can not only pick colors this way by just dialing it in on the color wheel, or save swatches like this, but you can also sample anywhere in the painting. So if I hold down this button and then point to where I want, it pinpoints a color, or in this case a value, since everything's gray. And the top half of the circle shows the new color you're picking. The bottom half of the circle shows what you had, so you can compare. I think for you guys this probably is appearing awfully dark. It really doesn't look that dark to me. I'm looking at the streaming screen. And that's too light. It's actually just, it's streaming a lot more contrasty than I see it. You know, back to your comment, Robert, about Photoshop. You know, Procreate is portable too. That's the thing. I can sit down, eat more easily in the living room while my wife and I are watching TV and sketch digitally. And doing that with Photoshop is difficult. I will say that the power, though, most of digital painting power resides in Photoshop. So that's the trade-off. You know, if you can get a digital tablet, it's just there's more involved in painting, digitally painting with Photoshop. You have to have a good graphics tablet and monitor, and I mean, there are ways I guess you could do that, so it's more portable. I've actually done it, you know, from my easy chair, but it's a little awkward. Procreate is definitely, the iPad and Apple Pencil is definitely more portable. And one of the things you can do is add layers. I haven't done it here, really. I just painted, but you can see you have a background color, which I added. This is sort of a toned gray, and you have a layer. I could have put, for instance, more background painting on a layer, then I could add a layer on top of that, and added the tree. Then I could have put another layer on top of that, and added foliage. You know, in a quick, simple sketch like this, I didn't bother to do that, but you can do that in Photoshop too. But that's a powerful thing. At this point, I'm just fiddling. I'm messing around with these bows, trying to see what I want to do with them. And I'm imagining everything I'm doing here. I'm imagining painting this in either watercolor or gouache. Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true, Robert. If you're interested and excited by digital tools, I always keep adding that caveat, because there are a lot of people that anything digital is just nothing but frustration and anathema, you know. And those people, I just don't recommend get into it. It's not that big of a benefit, and I've always gravitated towards digital tools and technology. You know, I enjoy technology. I enjoy learning about it. I don't think technology holds the same charm that natural media holds. It doesn't hold the same feel. So I continue to treat digital media as a tool for improving my natural media, or the final paintings. I'm not one that tends to want to do a lot of finished paintings digitally, you know. I might do actually a pretty tight study. There are artists out there doing some really nifty final art, you know, finished art digitally, but if I'm going to do finished art, I'd rather it be traditional. But I really love digital tools. They're exciting for me to use, and this is not the case with everybody by a long shot. So if you use those kind of tools and you find them fascinating and fun to learn, by the way, if you have an Apple store in your area, they offer free classes on a lot of things, and in our area I know Procreate is one of them. There's a gal who teaches Procreate. So if you're going to get an iPad, that may be something you want to check into. It's funny, you know, technology is funny and how people react to it. I have an uncle who, I mean, he just, you know, anything technological having to do with computers, he runs the other way. I mean, he just literally cannot stand having to fiddle with any of that. So if any of this is a frustration to you, it's really not worth it. My uncle flew me out. I live in South Carolina, okay? And he lives in Phoenix, Arizona. And he actually flew me out. Oh, now granted, there were other visiting things involved, but he flew me out there, and his excuse was he wanted me to set up his surround sound. Which I did. You know, we went out there for a visit, had a good time, and which I did. Had it all working great. All he had to do was turn on two elements, two pieces of equipment, power, and have the right remote. And 2 weeks after I got back, he had already forgotten how to do it and couldn't figure it out and didn't want to do it. And that video and surround sound equipment sat dormant for a couple years. No, what I'll probably do, Mary, is I'll probably freehand it down to my watercolor paper. I could use, if you've seen my latest video about the elephant, I could use that tool, but the proportions and placement is not that critical on a subject like this, so I'll probably freehand it down and just use this as a way of visualizing how I would simplify the values. But it is as a study for my final painting, yes. I would not need to print it though. I could just look at it right here off of my iPad as I freehand it down onto paper. Yeah, exactly, Robert. Exactly. And the iPad and Procreate is going to be easier to learn than Photoshop. Photoshop has a stiff learning curve. So if you're not into the Photoshop arena at all, just for doing this kind of thing, I do not recommend it. I can do either this or Photoshop only because I have been using Photoshop literally since version 1.0 in about 1991. And so I'm comfortable with it. I've kept up with the changes. I've done a lot of actual commercial assignment work with Photoshop. I made the transition back in the mid 90s to late 90s from doing airbrush technical work, to completely doing technical work on Photoshop or in Photoshop. It's an advantage in the commercial art arena because digital art for commercial purposes is easy to transport digitally, over internet, on disk. It's easy to make revisions. So it's not quite the same in commercial art. The considerations are not quite the same as fine art. Fine art, you feel more like you want to have physical original in your hand. At least I do. Yeah, it sounds good. Do investigate that. Maybe have someone demonstrate it for you. The newest iPad, now you use with the Apple Pencil, you used to have an iPad Pro. They've got a new version of the Apple Pencil that works with the newest version of iPad. Just straight up iPad, not the iPad Pro. However, the iPad Pro is bigger if you get the big version. So now I'm down to fooling around with branches and how highlights might cross over other branches. I think all the branches on this side I would keep kind of silhouette-y and just have these few highlighted here. Hey Keith, I'm popping in a little late, but it's, I'm sure, my fault because I didn't pre-announce this. This is what I'm calling a pop-up impromptu stream. I wanted to do this study today digitally for watercolor painting, which I intend to do. And I also am testing out some new equipment, some new streaming equipment. It actually uses my high resolution camera that I record my video on, and it just converts it to a stream. At least in tests so far, it looks better than the webcam I had been using. But I don't know. When this is done, I'm going to watch the replay over and see. But I was going from a photo I had of a tree. This is a hemlock tree, and it got some neat afternoon light, and I've been wanting to paint it for months. I've got the smudge tool chosen right now. It just allows me to take what's on the canvas here, the digital canvas, and smear it. And I can actually change brushes on it as much as I can any of the other painting tools. Mary actually pointed out earlier that this might be best done in gouache, and the more I think about it, the more I think she's right. Probably on tone gray paper. I mean, there's a lot of it I could do in watercolor, and as I've mentioned before, the way I like to use watercolor is do as much in transparent watercolor as I can, and then get gouache involved. But I think I would probably need to use a lot of gouache. Yeah, just saw the email, Keith. Yeah, I literally gave everybody like 15 minutes notice. And I'm more or less done. I'm just fiddling now. And branches like this, you see how I have this off center. That's a good compositional arrangement. And the center of interest, slightly off center and up. That's good. But what I'm thinking composition wise is taking your eye, leading it either into or out of. You don't want to do that in a major way, but it's always nice to have little elements that do that. And these branches in reality actually did do that kind of a thing, so I'm utilizing that. And on this side of the tree, most of them were silhouetted, and on this side of the tree there were highlights on a lot of them. You know, there are different kinds of contrasts too. I have thought about making an episode about this. The most obvious kind is light against dark. But another kind of contrast that is really interesting is big shapes versus tiny shapes, or in the case of a tree, broad, fat limbs versus little tiny, sort of wispy, thin limbs. And so you want to use them judiciously. I personally, in my own composition, do not want to go and put little scrawny little detailed limbs everywhere. I want to just pull the eye into certain areas and create areas of sub-interest. So here's your major interest, and here's a little bit of sub-interest. And of course it needs to be anatomically correct for the tree, but you know, it puts out some nice little detailed thin limbs. And so I want to bring the eye in places just to kind of feast on some of those little details. Here, maybe out here a little bit. And I'm doing this, you know, I'm designing that. I'm not seeing it exactly. I did see it in the photo. It's just not exactly where I'm putting it. So that's how you design a scene. You take those areas and you don't necessarily put it where it was in the photo. You put it where it'll serve your piece, your painting. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Yes, Keith, this is Procreate on the iPad Pro using an Apple Pencil. And it is a value study for a painting that I intend to do. And I'm pretty much just looking it over now, saying, what else do I want to do, if anything? What don't I like? What do I want to change? Right now I'm just playing with the shadows on the tree. Trying to differentiate those from a branch. Shadows and light, to me, are the secret spice of every painting. I think I've said that in videos before, but I am serious. Light and shadow is what makes, when it comes to art and representational art, it's what makes the world go round, literally. If you can get, and of course first is proportion and accurate drawing, but if you can get light and shadow into your paintings, they will stand out head and shoulders above all the others, as long as they're accurately drawn and well composed. Anybody have any last questions? I'm going to probably end the stream here. It's been almost an hour and a half. Has been an hour and a half of streaming, so I'm probably going to call it to a close here, bring it to a close. But if you have any last minute questions, I'd be happy to take those. I think I have a study that's workable for me and something that I will be able to use. Yes, Mary, I do plan to probably make an episode out of the finished watercolor when I get to it. I don't know, maybe this will be next week's episode, I'm not sure. But I will share this one. Been a painting I've been wanting to do for months. I see this scene every time I go down to check the mailbox. I think I mentioned that before, and I just finally snapped a picture of it. Great, Robert. Glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me. And I think with that, I will sign off. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. And we'll see you guys next week in the next video. Thanks for your support. You guys are so awesome.